London, 1952. A thick, yellow smog has swallowed the city, turning midday into a toxic midnight. Inside the ground floor flat at 10 Rillington Place, John Christie stands in his kitchen. His breath is thin and raspy, a reminder of the mustard gas that scorched his lungs in the Great War. Beside him lies his wife, Ethel. There was no struggle, no warning. John's hands simply closed around her neck and didn't let go until the room was silent. Welcome to the Well of Monsters. This is the story of a man who looked like the perfect neighbor while he was slowly turning his home into a graveyard. John Reginald Christie was born in Yorkshire in 1899. He was a skinny, sickly boy, constantly bullied by his 5 sisters and ruled by a cold, dominant father. He was a bedwetter and lacked any form of confidence. This early humiliation created a desperate, lifelong need for control, a need to have power over someone who couldn't fight back or mock him. The first time John felt a sense of peace was at age 12, standing over his grandfather's open coffin. While the rest of the family was in tears, John was fascinated. He realized his grandfather was finally silent, finally still, and completely under his gaze. It was the first moment in his life where he felt he held the ultimate upper hand. When World War I tore through Europe, it left John with a permanent scar. A cloud of mustard gas burned his throat, reducing his voice to a dry, ghost-like whisper. But John soon realized this wasn't a disability, it was an invitation. To hear him, people had to lean in. They had to trust him. He looked like a frail veteran with thick glasses and a soft heart. That whisper became a trap. It made his victims feel safe, as if they were sharing a secret with a man who wouldn't hurt a fly. It's August 1943. The sirens are wailing over London, but John has his own darkness to manage. His wife, Ethel, is away, and he invites Ruth First, a young Austrian worker, back to his flat. The air in the room is tense. Ruth is just looking for a moment of connection in a lonely city. When John's hands find her neck, the betrayal is instant. After the struggle, the house is too quiet. John doesn't panic, he works with a chilling, methodical focus. He pries up the floorboards in the front room, feeling the rough wood against his palms, and slides Ruth into the cold earth beneath. He nails the boards back so perfectly that when Ethel returns, she walks over a grave every day, completely unaware. A year later, John meets Muriel Edie. She has a heavy, painful cough, and John plays the part of the concerned friend. "I have something that will help," he whispers. He leads her to his kitchen, where a jar is rigged to the cold gas line. Muriel breathes in, expecting relief. Instead, her head begins to swim, her limbs go heavy, and the world turns gray. As she slumps, paralyzed but perhaps still aware, John finishes what the gas started. With the floorboards full, he waits for a rainy night to drag her into the backyard. He buries her in the mud, right next to where he grows his vegetables, as if she were just another part of the earth. One morning, while John is out fixing his garden fence, the shovel hits something hard. He clears the dirt and finds a human thigh bone, Muriel's. A normal man would have collapsed in terror. John simply looks at it. He sees a tool. He uses that bone to prop up a sagging fence post. When his neighbor asks about the white, smooth wood in the garden, John just smiles. Just some blitz rubble, old boy. He was literally building his life out of the people he had destroyed, and he felt no guilt, only a sense of tidy order. Easter 1948 brings new life to the top floor, Timothy and Beryl Evans, a young couple with a baby girl named Geraldine. They are young, poor, and overwhelmed. Timothy is a man who can't read or write, a man who struggles to understand the world around him. John watches them through the thin walls. He hears their desperate, loud arguments. He sees a young man who is impulsive and easy to confuse. In John's eyes, Timothy wasn't a neighbor, he was a safety net. A perfect person to take the fall. By late 1949, Beryl Evans is pregnant again. In a time when another mouth to feed feels like a death sentence and abortion is a crime that leads to prison, she is terrified. John leans in, his whisper more comforting than ever. "I have medical training," he lies. He shows Timothy a medical book, knowing the man can't read a single word. He offers to help for free. Beryl trusts him. He brought Beryl down to his kitchen while Timothy was at work. By the time Timothy came home, Beryl was gone. John didn't run, he stepped into the role of a mentor. After Beryl is gone, John realizes the baby, Geraldine, is still upstairs. The thought of a witness, even one who can't speak, is too much. 2 days later, he silences the child too. When Timothy returns, John is waiting in the dim hallway. He plays on Timothy's fear and low IQ. The procedure failed, John whispers. The police will hang you. You need to run. Timothy, broken and terrified, flees to Wales, leaving his entire world in the hands of the man who had just dismantled it. The trial is a masterclass in deception. John Christie sits in the witness box, looking like a frail, respectable veteran. He speaks so softly that the judge has to ask him to speak up. Timothy, confused and grieving, tells 3 different stories. The jury looks at the kindly neighbor and the violent young man and makes a choice. In March 1950, Timothy Evans is led to the gallows, crying out for a wife and child he didn't kill. John goes back to Rillington Place, the silence finally restored. By 1952, the house is rotting from the inside. The smells are getting harder to hide. Ethel is starting to ask questions, she's looking at John differently. She has become a threat to his peace. On December 14th, while she sleeps, John's hands find their familiar place. He kills his own wife and puts her under the floorboards, right where his first victim lay years ago. He forged letters to her family telling them she was ill while he lived alone in the decaying flat surrounded by his secrets. Between January and March 1953, John loses all control. He kills 3 more women, Rita Nelson, Kathleen Maloney, and Hectorina McLennan. The garden is full. The floorboards are packed. He looks at a small pantry alcove in his kitchen. He stands the 3 women upright in that tiny space, shoulder to shoulder, hidden behind a false wall of wood. It was a macabre, vertical graveyard right where he prepared his meals. John didn't just hide the bodies, he wanted the room to look right. He bought rolls of floral wallpaper that matched the rest of the kitchen. He spent hours matching the patterns, gluing the paper over the false wall. For weeks, he sat in that kitchen, drinking his tea, with 3 bodies just inches away, separated only by a thin layer of flowers and wood. The contrast between the domestic peace and the horror behind the wall is where John Christie truly lived. John runs out of money and simply walks away from the flat. A new tenant, Beresford Brown, moves in. He's trying to find a solid spot to hang a shelf for his radio. He taps on the kitchen wall and it sounds hollow. He peels back a loose corner of the floral wallpaper and sees the wooden slats. When he pulls one away, the smell of years of rot hits him like a physical blow. He shines a torch into the darkness and sees the back of a human body. The secret was out. While the police were counting the bodies, John Christie was wandering the streets of London. He was broke and had been sleeping in shelters. On March 31, 1953, a police officer spotted him leaning against a railing near Putney Bridge. He looked dirty, his clothes were ragged, and he didn't try to run. When the officer asked for his name, he admitted who he was. He was taken into custody without a fight. At the station, he confessed to the murders, describing the gas he used and where he hid each person. The police arrived at 10 Rillington Place with sledgehammers and crowbars. They tore down the rest of the false wall in the kitchen and found 3 women, Hectorina McLennan, Kathleen Maloney, and Rita Nelson, stacked inside the alcove. But they didn't stop there. They moved to the front room and ripped up the floorboards. Beneath the joists, wrapped in a blanket, they found the body of John's wife, Ethel. Finally, they went to the back garden. Under the soil, they dug up the skeletal remains of 2 more women, Ruth First and Muriel Eady, who had been missing for years. The trial was short. Christie's defense tried to say he was insane, but the jury didn't buy it. He was found guilty of murder. On July 15, 1953, John Christie was led to the gallows at Pentonville Prison and executed by hanging. Shortly after, the house at 10 Rillington Place was demolished. Today, nothing remains of the building except an empty space, but the details of what happened behind that wallpaper are still recorded in the police files of London. This journey through the fog of 1950s London stayed with you. Feel free to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It's the best way to support these stories and ensure you're here the next time we lift the veil on the unknown. Thank you for spending this time with me. Take care, stay safe, and see you at the bottom of the well.